If you've got tight, stiff feet that are super sensitive or even painful anytime you try and walk around without shoes, this is the video for you. Because I'm about to share a simple 4-part strategy that'll have you moving easier and feeling better in no time. Let's get into this. Like so many of the foot problems that I see in clinical practice, stiff, sensitive feet often have their origins in inappropriate footwear. What I'm talking about here specifically are shoes with a thick cushioned sole made up of dense foam that directly interferes with the thousands of sensory nerves in your feet getting the one thing that they need in order to function properly, which is stimulation. And when you rob structures in the body of stimulation for an extended period of time, they atrophy. Just look at what happens to astronauts when they go up into space and their bodies are no longer being stimulated by the constant pull of gravity. Their muscles and bones wither away at an unprecedented rate. And that's why part 1 of this strategy is to wake your feet up. My favorite way of doing that is with an all-natural skin brush like this. Now the key, if you've got really sensitive or painful feet, is to apply firm, consistent pressure with the brush, but don't push so hard that it causes pain, and then use a slow brushing motion, maintaining that consistent pressure the entire time. A quick brushing motion for any painful area in the body can really cause irritation. So like you saw, I start on the inside edge of my foot, just a few brushes, transition over to the top of the foot, and over to the outside edge. Then I move around the back, getting that Achilles area, inside edge of the heel, and then down to the bottom of the foot where you can use a little bit more pressure. The goal here is just to get some tingling in your feet, increase circulation, get some nice sensory input. Once you finish one side, about 30 to 45 seconds, switch over to the opposite side and repeat. One other thing that I want to mention here is that for some of the patients that I work with who have really sensitive and painful feet, the natural fiber brush is a little too intense. And for those folks, I found a silicone fiber brush that works fantastic. I'll be sure to put a link for that in the description down below. Part 2 of this strategy is to put a little movement in your feet. And what I'm talking about here specifically is using gentle stretching and micro movements to reintroduce mobility to regions of your foot that may have forgotten how to function properly as a result of being locked away in shoes for an extended period of time. And because it's the front of the foot that tends to suffer most in traditional shoes, that's the area that I like to focus on with these gentle mobilizations. I also perform the mobilizations one toe at a time because I find that it's really rare that all of a person's toes move equally well, whether that's due to trauma that they've had during their lifetime or whatever. But you want to be able to control the movement of each toe individually. That's really important. So starting with the big toe, I push it back into extension where I'm stretching the toe towards my shin, holding for about 5 seconds. You want to push to the point where you get a stretch, but not so far that it causes pain. Ease your way out of it, onto the second toe. Never want to force anything. Okay, if you've had an old fracture or something, the toes might not move even like the neighboring toe. So pay close attention to the sensations that you're getting as you go through this. And then just move down each toe one at a time, all the way down to that neglected pinky toe. I then go into flexion, where I'm bending the toe downward, bringing it towards the heel of my foot, again holding for about 5 seconds, and then onto the next toe, holding for 5 seconds, each one. This one's gonna give you a nice stretch over the top of the toes, and then the final movement, and the one that I like the most, is gentle rotation. So I turn the toe very gently like so, in an outward direction, and then in an inward direction. And I just hold for a second or two in each position, moving on to the next toe, outward, inward, back and forth through all of the toes. This one feels really good. Again, very small amount of motion, but just getting those joints used to working through their entire range of motion. Part 3 is to take up more space. One of the main problems with many traditional shoes is that they're simply not designed to accommodate a human foot. And this is apparent in the narrow, pointed toe boxes that we so often see nowadays. Shoes like these prevent your feet from going into their natural position. They also don't allow for the normal expansion of the foot, which happens anytime you've been standing on your feet or walking around for a little while. Squeezing the front of the foot like this can also restrict blood flow. In fact, one of the main causes of impaired circulation into the feet and legs is ill-fitting footwear. And so to counteract this, we need to make even more space at the front of the foot so that the blood vessels in this region have plenty of room to operate. And the best and most efficient way I know for doing that is by wearing a pair of toe separators like these for a period of time each day. This simple device increases space at the forefoot by separating the metatarsals. And simply by doing that, we can dramatically improve the structural alignment, blood flow, and functionality of the entire foot. Recently, I was working with a patient who complained of chronic pain and rigidity in her feet. She also mentioned that her feet were often cold, even when it wasn't cold outside. And I introduced her to these exact toe separators, and I had her try them on right there in the clinic. And I've never seen somebody struggle so much to get a pair of toe separators on. It was really difficult for her because of the stiffness in her toes. But after she finally got them in place and began standing in them, something incredible happened after just 3 or 4 minutes. The color of her feet completely changed. They went from kind of a pale whitish yellow color to pink. She mentioned that they felt warmer and she had less sensitivity when walking. After taking them off, I noticed that the mobility in her toes was improved and they were much less sensitive when I touched them. Pretty amazing for just a few minutes of wearing toe separators. When you're first starting out with toe separators, especially if you've got really stiff feet like that patient that I was just telling you about, it's important that you ease yourself into the process. What does that mean? It means that you should start with a very short amount of time. Think like 2 to 5 minutes on your first try. From there, assuming you don't get sore, you can begin slowly building your time up. The ultimate goal here is to work yourself up to the point where you're wearing these for 30 to 60 minutes each day. It also means that you should start out with a non-weight bearing position. Think like sitting at your desk or wearing them when you're lying in bed at night. Once you work up to the point where you can do 10 to 20 minutes with no discomfort whatsoever, you can transition to a weight-bearing position where you begin standing and walking while wearing the toe separators. Part 4 is to exercise your feet, and by far the most efficient and effective way of doing this is to spend a little time walking barefoot every single day. The thick, cushioned, rigid soles that are so often found in traditional shoes not only block sensory input into your feet, they actually prevent the muscles in your feet from functioning the way that they're supposed to. And because of that, your feet get weaker and weaker and weaker over time when wearing them. The researchers in this article that was published in 2021 found that by getting people out of their traditional shoes and putting them on a walking program in barefoot minimalist style shoes, they could increase their foot strength by an average of over 57% in just 6 months' time. And it's my belief that a barefoot walking program, because of increased sensory input and increased muscular demand, would produce even better results. With that said, a walking program of this type might not be the most appropriate place to start for everyone out there who's got stiff, rigid feet. But spending just a little bit of time each day standing or walking barefoot, even inside of your own home, is still a fantastic way to increase sensory input and strengthen the intrinsic muscles in your feet. I recommend starting out with just a few minutes a day, like I said, inside of your own house and slowly building over time. Once you get comfortable with part 3 of this strategy, that's wearing those toe separators, you can even combine parts 3 and 4 together and wear the toe separators around your home while you're doing your barefoot walking. If you're looking for specific recommendations for the skin brushes, toe separators, and barefoot shoes that I use and recommend, I'll leave links for all of those in the description down below this video. And if you'd like more information about toe separators, I've got a whole video that talks all about that, and you can see that by clicking the link in the upper right-hand corner of your screen now. Beyond that, I just want to thank you so much for watching. Make sure to hit that thumbs up button and the subscribe button before you head out of here, and I'll see you next time.